Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you today a fringe encounter with the unatheist on Twitter or babyface Tom Robinson, as the case may be. Here are your savings throws for this episode. Remember, you can choose survival, social, wisdom, or heart. Ooh, survivalist with a nat 1, you're in trouble. Socialist with a 13. Sophist, prime 17. And heart with a 5. So you need more than a hat. I hope you have some other bonuses. Ladies and gentlemen, the Fringe Encounter. Tom, hello. You're on. I'm
Oh,
on. We're on. Let's meet.
GrimGriz.
That's
Now, do
me.
you like to be called Grizz?
Sometimes.
Grizz is good.
It's I think I use the more familiar the person is with me. Like if once we're
I'm,
friends, Grizz is better, and until then Grim is
I'm
fine.
a
But
stranger. Then what is better?
well, I know you enough from Twitter, you can call me Grizz. That's fine.
Okay, because I feel like this is our first true encounter.
Yeah, but the Twitters have
Twitter's,
been going on for a while, so you're
yeah,
familiar there.
yeah, yes, yes, familiar, and yet to me, as one of your audience, one of the things I wanted to do today was just to untangle some of the things that you present because to me, you're a mystery. You're kind of a mystery, and you have a lot of thoughts that I have to uncode.
Okay.
And when I watched Sevilla thought, a couple times you see that these headphones aren't going to be my favorite, but uh, I lost both. She wanted to stop.
Whoa. Wanted to stop. Wanted to stop, he said, and then the world ended. Well, that's fabulous. Now you're here, but sideways, which is fascinating.
So every time I laugh, my cheeks push my little headphones out. So that
Uh oh.
stinks.
I'm supposed to
Yeah,
be funny, too.
yeah. Well, I'd like to be. Anyway, you have a lot of references that I struggle with, and but to me, you talk this intellectual level that weaving all these threads together, and it's just intriguing, but it's a lot of threads.
Yeah,
You've
and,
got to
and depending on my consciousness state at the time, I like to bounce between three in a spiral, and that can be off putting, I think.
right. Well, it reminds me of what I do. So I preach at a church here, and I preach to an older congregation. So they're all, I don't know, 70 might be the average age. And it's something similar to Paul. It's an aging church, and and I speak as someone who's trying to connect all these ideas, and I don't follow my own script. I think about the things I want to say, and I try and connect different biblical ideas or whatever ideas are going in my head. And I think I sometimes the people look at me with a little quizzical look in their eyes, and uh, but I feel like I want to speak in a fashion that is more modern. I don't want to do a little a typical message. I want to do something that is kind of exciting, dynamic that young people, if they ever show up, may like. That's my aim. One of the things you said to Paul, you on the last talk you had, you said about why would young people want to go to church,
Hmm.
and I feel like I want to have some kind of dynamic message or something that if they do find some reason to come, I'm trying to fish, so I'm throwing bait and I'm trying to hook somebody. And it's what Paul is doing too. It's he said about being evangelical. It's evangelism of some sort.
Well, fishers of men
Yes,
is the promise, yes?
yes, correct. Now, going fishing, you usually go out to a fishing hole. You don't expect the fish to come to you. So church is an odd take on fishing. So in some way, you're trying to tell the people there, let's go out from here and go fishing. So you're always trying to communicate that thought. We're here to encourage each other, tell fish stories, and then go out into the world. Dang, I do not like these.
Be the net.
Yeah, be the net, right? Yeah, one time, one of my messages, one of the things about, in some way, I was caught, so I got caught up in the net, and Jesus is the ultimate fisher, and he caught me. And I was talking one time, doing a little message, and one of the ideas is, as a fish, I don't really want to be caught by a net. I don't want to be dragged in a boat, and I'm flopping around. And I said too, I'm not here because as a fish, I jumped in the boat. I'm here because I'm caught and he won't let me go. And one of the ideas is that people, I think, have a hard time. We end up thinking about ourselves as empowered to follow well or to be a changed person. And in some ways, I'm not that changed. I'm a little changed. I'm a lot changed, but in some ways, I was caught, and it wasn't catch and release. It was catch and consume. It was he doesn't release.
Can I ask you how old you were when you were caught?
I was 27, and well, I was a little younger, but that was when I told Paul my story, which I wanted to talk. I wanted to be one of the cool conversations where you really talked about these intellectual ideas, and he ended up. I told my story a little bit, and I didn't really have a discussion that I wanted to. So I was 27. I had met Jesus through some of my friends, and we were a druggy type crowd.
What kind?
So Teen Challenge, if you heard of Teen Challenge.
But hold
One of the
on. You
guys,
said druggy type crowd. What kind of drugs?
yeah. Well, I didn't shoot up. I didn't do heroin, which to me just felt like that's commitment. Once you start shooting in your arm, is like that's for the serious players. But I did other stuff. I did, I did hallucinogenics. I did uh, coke, which is an expensive drug. So I really stuck. My main drug was meth. So meth is the poor man's coke. It has a very strong effect,
It's like
long
off-brand
acting.
Adderall.
Yeah, I don't know, something like that. Yeah, yeah, it's rough, but yeah. So Teen Challenge guy and another guy, my buddies, introduced Jesus. So I'm like, I think I need that. So I kind of agreed with Jesus, but I didn't. It didn't. Nothing happened to me till I ended up. A friend of mine was killed in a crash, and that was one of the moments when I was talking to Paul, and he goes, "Oh no, it was a shock." And then I went. It was a young lady who was engaged. I went with her fiance to the funeral, and then I hung with him for a while. And he was going to church, so I ended up going to church. And I thought, oh, this is the thing I needed to get away from the people, places, and things, which AA talks about. If you're going to hang out with druggies, you might end up doing drugs.
And if you
So,
hang out with church folk, you might end up going to church.
yeah, point was I was back at going to church. I got planted in a church, and I said I was caught. I'm caught in the net. And
Was there a point of
to me,
realization?
Jesus,
Like
well, some of the things
you've been going to
yeah,
church for like a couple weeks or whatever, right? And then was there a moment? Was there a flip, the flip of a switch when you realized that, all right, were you filled with the
uh,
Holy Spirit? Was there anything?
well, that was interesting when you mentioned that. No, it was somebody else Paul was talking to. It was the guy with the handlebar mustache he just did. Might have been that guy. And I never felt, he's, it was a guy Paul recently talked to that said, he's in some kind of charismatic church or something. They're doing the filling of the Holy Spirit, and he didn't feel any change. So he's like, well, that was a rejection by God. Everybody else is getting something I'm not. And I felt overwhelmed, but you can feel overwhelmed listening to a Barbara Streisand song or whatever. Dolly Parton sings "I'll Always Love You," and it's like, Dolly, thank you. There's guys at the. I don't know if I want to tell all the stories. Yeah, I'll tell all the stories. there's some guys at the shop I work at, and he has some posters on the wall of some girls, and they look at me like they truly love me. These girls are looking, and I'm like,
They look
and
at
I
the
tell the guy who
cameraman
has,
that way anyway.
yeah, yeah, right. But there was no switch. But there are times when you go and hear an altar call, and you're like, I'd like to be saveder, saveder than I am now. I'll go up again and let you pray, and I can get weepy as the next person. So that idea of being savior, you're saved, and even there's so many things to talk about when you read the Psalms and you see and David is talking about, God, why are you so distant? This is a thing that I think people would like Jesus to be present with them, and it's like he's not sitting in the room with you, but you get a sense that you're on his team, and there's some kind of peace. But I don't have any magic powers or anything. Like if I said heal, you might walk next to me like a dog, but you won't feel any better. That's
Well,
supposed to be
I, I believe might be a strong word, but my impression is that most of the healings that are biblical,
mm-hmm.
most, because there are
Yeah,
exceptions, is Jesus says that your faith has healed you.
right.
And so if my faith allows you saying be healed as an
Yeah,
avenue for which the healing to flow, if I have enough faith for that, then you sure didn't do
yeah,
anything, but
right,
except provide
right.
the channel.
Yeah. And I've seen some, I'll pray for people. And there was a time I prayed for a guy. He came into the church, asked for prayers for his son. And I prayed. And like the next instant, he got a phone call, and it's my son. Oh, he's doing fine. I'm like, well, there you go. So, but I don't, yeah, the power isn't, I don't have any powers. Now, the disciples, when they're walking around, they seem to, I think Peter pulled a couple of miracles out of his hat, miracle healings. But whatever it wasn't so straightforward. It was at times very easy to see, and at other times the disciples seemed to stumble around, not knowing what's going on.
Well, I will disclaim that my faith in man is such that all I've really been able to attach to in the Bible is what Jesus says, the words in red, and
Yeah.
a little bit of Acts from my Pentecostal exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And but to have like what do I know about the Corinthians? Like, that's more
Yeah.
faith than I have, you
Well,
know?
the Corinthians were a mess. I think Paul kept writing them letters and saying, "What are you guys doing?" Anyway, I wanted to talk about things. I did have things that I wrote down. I sent you a picture of
Yeah, it says I have it
a
in the
thing.
browser window available now.
Yeah.
Would you like to go through something on the list? I like dark
Well,
adjacent
yeah.
is the one that
Yeah.
jumps
What I
out
was
at
thinking
me. Can
about.
we start there?
Yeah. Well, I think to me, when you were talking to Paul and you said about the things, do you realize what it's like out here? And you were saying, some things about the brokenness of the world and the hurt of people. Dang these things. And there's a real darkness in the world. And I didn't grow up in the church bubble. I grew up in the world bubble. I was in the mess, and I was pulled from the mire. So uh, I knew a lot of trouble. I had some ability to avoid trouble because you can see trouble coming a mile away, and you're either the personality who likes it or the personality who says it's time to leave.
Hmm.
And that was me. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to get arrested. I don't want to get shot. So I know when it's time to go.
There are some serious consequences coming, and I can tell. I'll be
Yeah,
over there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's not hard to tell. It's just as if you're attentive. You have to be attentive. But what I thought was, and you said a couple things. And you even said, that the darkness is so, dang it, prevalent, that you could see taking yourself out. You could see that if you don't feel some kind of purpose, you can see this nihilism that leads to even complete loss of hope. And so to me, we both had that encounter with darkness. But I think personality wise, and the Peterson Big Five personality, or whatever the things that affect you, I feel like I could see the darkness, and then I could be next to it and say, I can dip my feet in the water and say, oh, that feels shark infested or unappealing or acidic or something, too cold, and I can pull back. But I feel like some people get close and they don't have the same personality or the same. I don't even know if it's protection, that I've felt I was protected in some way, because I've been cared for in a way that clearly I wasn't. It wasn't because I was making great choices. Somehow I was, walked along, and my life has been a mess, and it's still a mess. My earphone is way across the room now. Dark adjacent, and I was wondering if you weren't, your personality is going to be different. I'm super optimistic. It seems like I was wondering how optimistic. What is your optimistic outlook? Because you see these conspiracies and you see a lot of chaos in your. Uh,
Take three. Dark
yeah,
adjacent.
Dr. Jason. Yeah, I was wondering, and I'll let you talk because I like talking the whole time. But do you feel like that's a thing, that you're dark adjacent? You can feel the tug or the sadness, the darkness that weighs on people.
I it seems like that's mostly it. And then there's these little islands and oases of not
Mm.
that people can come together and create.
Right.
Um, and for me, the hard part is playing along and feeling like I'm contributing to the way things are. And like
Okay.
the majority of my hopefulness comes from the book of Revelation. That it,
Okay.
like, despite the fact that everything keeps getting worse and worse, that just means we're getting closer and closer to the time when the downhill
Right.
ends and the
Yeah.
return happens. Um, but enduring until that point
Mm.
is quite the struggle.
Yeah. Now, what's your community? Because one of the things, when I was planted in a church, I found people that at least agreed that Jesus was better than, than the typical stuff. Do you have that kind of community? Because this uh, virtually, virtually
We're virtually not
together.
alone. Yeah.
Yeah, virtually not alone. Yeah, that's a hint. It's a hint of virtual loneliness too. It's some kind of hint that it's not necessarily face to face.
Well,
Because I have community, and I've always had community.
meat space wise, this place has always been one I wanted to escape.
Okay.
As far as like even when I was secular completely,
Mm.
like small town Oklahoma doesn't have a lot of like even if I do really well here, I'm still in small town Oklahoma. And
Right.
so and then I escaped a couple of times, but like some vortex I get pulled back
Hmm.
and then
Right.
the, they the opportunities around are enough to keep you here, but not enough to help you escape.
Right.
So, and as such, like I've been unable to embrace bloom where you're planted,
Hmm.
and so I retreated into into the digital space because
Mhm.
it felt like it's like the opportunities are few and far between, but the opportunities, if you land one, would have a lot more potential than what's local. And but
Well, I feel like the virtual space too. This is where it seems like the whole world is starting to open up, that we're all going to go into this virtual space. And I worked with students, so I want to talk about Jesus and paintball too at some point, because definitely uh, I've talked about that a lot. I've taken kids and shot at them many times,
good.
which is quite fun. Yes, and I'm crazy enough to we played skins one time against girls, and the boys had to play skins. So paintball skins. That's I always look for how do you get to some kind of crazy level. But this virtual, the meta space or whatever it is that's coming.
The digital prison. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's going to go there, and I can see it with my kids. I get what they're, and I even get it, watching YouTube videos. I get what everybody likes, and as uh, robotics or whatever comes in, and you can be replaced. You talked about the hospital replacing you with, some kind of
That they
recording device.
it's a software that
Yeah,
did most of the
you
work
can
of a
transcribe.
transcriptionist, and so they needed
Mhm.
about 10% of the staff to correct the software instead
Right,
of the 100 or so people doing it.
right. So that, to me, it's obvious that something is coming. That, and you saw, I don't know if you watched Andrew Yang, in the last election cycle. He was going to be the Democrat. I guess it was 20. When was Trump elected? 2016.
Yeah, I don't. I recognize him as the champion of universal basic income or
Yes.
universal
Right.
welfare, as the case may be.
Right. And he could see automated trucks, and that was his big thing was, what are we going to do with truck drivers? And this idea that we're going to be automated out of work. Even digital, I thought, digital office space where you're working at home, but you have some icon or some uh, avatar that goes in, and you need to use the copier or something. Your little avatars will walk around in this digital space, and it'll be like that one video game where the little people walk around and, hey, Susie, how's it going? "Oh, it's going okay." And you'll have that interaction uh, in a workplace environment, and even content creation. I don't know exactly what's coming, but something is coming, and it's a big change. But we're just going to go right in.
Yeah,
I think.
there's so many angles to look at on that. For me, an important one is the film Ready Player One by
Yeah.
Spielberg. Like
Hmm.
the opening 5 minutes of that is like what they have planned for humanity, as far as I can tell.
Right. We're gonna be
And
living in the stacks.
it just uh, living plug. It's like plugged into something we're not living. Like we
Hmm.
abandon our meat space bodies to the extent it's possible,
Yeah.
and live imprisoned in our intellectual ego selves
Yeah.
until they put us
Yeah.
down for eating so much. Um,
Yeah.
but I think there's a really strong antinatal depopulation undercurrent to a lot of what's
Hmm.
going on, like transition into sterility from
Yeah.
whatever you were born with. I think screen-based disassociation is a thing. Like I think that's one of the things that I became. It's like,
Hmm.
sure, I'm this meat space body here where I don't matter, but on the internet I'm GrimGriz, and
Right.
like my strengths as far as intellectually can shine there with complete disregard to the physical situation.
Yeah. But what about, to me, they're going to be characters who have the intellectual capacity to produce content. But what about, the mass of humanity that consumes content? To me, so I'm going to go out and do some. I'm going to try and play some music and go out. And one of my things now is, you guys have to produce content. There's something that a move away from Hollywood to individuals, and that may be what the digital space is. It's everybody creating content for their own little 100 fans who somehow support them with Patreon or whatever, and everybody's just producing content,
But not
because little.
contentment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the strange things about the language, that content and content are the same and completely different. That's the kind of word plays that are interesting if you get to produce content and stand in front of people and talk to them, and you have to wrestle with what do I say, and you notice all the things, the ways, the connections, and the wordplay. How we had a sunrise service, so the sun is rising, and the service was the sun rising, and it's like, that is interesting. Life is strange and interesting, and it's strange that people don't see it. We are kind of zombies, being losing the big picture. And to me, that's what I want to, I want to keep preaching, and it gives purpose. It gives, you're the voice of one crying out in the wilderness. So you're crying out in the wilderness.
Are you familiar with Harry
You know?
Potter?
Yeah, I listened to the whole audio series, just a year or so ago, and I thought it was great.
There's I don't know which book it is. I think it's like four or five. But the students come together and take it upon themselves to teach their
Mm-hmm.
own defense against the dark arts class because what they're being taught is so corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And there's I serve in that vein with
Mm-hmm.
with trying to, like, we're so inundated with, like, Mark. Okay, so humans get better at whatever they do, and a great illustration is if you watch gymnastics from the 60s in the Olympics and more
Mm-hmm.
recent gymnastics, just humans get
Yeah.
better at whatever they do. And one of the
Right.
things there's been a lot of money and effort in doing is manipulation through advertising. So
Right.
to
There's
me,
big money there.
it's important to try and put together an education system of that to, like,
Mm-hmm.
if like the water in which us fish swim is
Mm-hmm.
so full of that stuff that our ability to recognize it would at least potentially mitigate some of the negative effects of that kind of mind control. Give
Mm-hmm.
bonuses to people's savings throws versus advertising, for example. Um,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
haven't done. I'm not much for the due diligence, thanks to my personality traits.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
so
have some struggles.
and
The
so
due diligence. Yeah.
developing a syllabus or
Yeah.
finding that, like, that's one of the things I asked Paul if he'd be interested in doing is teaching the
Mm-hmm.
skills of missionary work because that's
Right.
another that's similar. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's I don't know.
Well, one of the strange things too is that, everybody's on a mission all the time. They're always selling something, promoting something, and it doesn't matter if you like sugar pops and you say, have you tasted the cereal or last night's TV show? We're always evangelizing something. Did you see the WWF championship last night? It was, or the Eagles you know, win a football game, and it has to do with worship. And one of the things, so I'm very small and local, and I never had a vision for becoming big. I don't know. Anyway, uh, but we're always doing that into our some little circle. We're always promoting something, and I think again it's becoming aware of, you if you really love some video game, Sim City or whatever it is, and you're talking to people about it, you're praising it, you're lifting it up, you're worshiping it in some way, you're putting it in a this is worthy, and you're trying to convince people. We always want a community too. We want people to join us. It's the same with drugs. People get good at doing drugs, and when I was doing drugs, that's what I was doing, and I wanted to get better, and I wanted other people to join me. And it was there's a community in a killing yourself softly with meth or whatever. There's a community, and you do it, and you can do a line, and it can just rip your nose apart, and it's like, yeah, and you're proud of your conquering this horror show, and it's what the circle will do. It's you know you're always encouraging and selling and worshiping something. So evangelism, what I was going to get at was, there's a sense that you can teach someone to be very good at it, I think. But personalities, I don't think I get better at anything. And I think I've hit a level, and it's like, I'm trying to practice guitar more because I've been playing for 40 years, and I'm just hit average. And that seems like that's as far as I'm going, because personality wise, I just don't run hard after it. I don't know if I can be any better at evangelism, with training, guitar, that due diligence. But just to touch on the things, you talked to Paul about wins. You talked about Ned Flanders.
Well, it's a
Start a
marketing
church.
issue, I think, for the
Yeah,
church, you know?
yeah. Well, yeah,
I mean, all my friends are out, like, getting ass and fornicating, and I'm supposed to
right,
live clean, and for why?
right. Yeah.
What's the selling point?
Well, yeah. It's not clear that uh, there is a selling point. It's some kind of sacrifice, a call to sacrifice. So Peterson has that whole same thing. It's a call to sacrifice, and it's not, uh, cleaning your room is its own reward. It's
Or
like,
or cleaning your
well,
temple?
yeah, cleaning the
Like,
temple.
what if we
Yeah,
get off the white sugar? What
well,
if
I would love
God
to.
made us
Yeah,
as like beings that can tune into a higher frequency of being,
yeah,
and we pollute it because we can't tame our own beasts? Like it's Gospel of Thomas, so like it's
yeah.
not canon or anything, but there's a Jesus quote of "Blessed is the man who consumes the lion,
I remember.
for the lion becomes a man."
Yeah,
And so, but we're being consumed by our own lions, and
right.
cursed
Or
is
be
the
consumed.
man who the lion eats,
Yeah,
because the lion becomes a man.
yeah.
So,
In some ways, Satan is prowling like a lion, looking for who he can consume.
and so there's this Yahoo on YouTube called Saint John Julian Baba Wanyama,
Yeah,
who makes the claim that the crucifixion happens within our body,
yeah,
and that if we preserve it, um, it it travels down into our sacrum area and then back up into our brain, where it chills for 2.5 days, and and should
yeah,
we preserve it throughout that process, it then like squirts our pineal gland from two of the other glands, like basically covers our inner eye, or anoints our inner eye with the milk and honey, and that level basically gets our beasts out of the way
mhm,
enough for our attention to be captured by the things God wants to show us.
yeah,
And I personally like there's this angle that if I live clean enough and that still doesn't do anything, then the disappointment from that
you
will be
need,
like being rejected by the Holy Spirit.
yeah,
And so it's like by not allowing myself to put it to the test, I I can have faith that it's real.
Well, but it's almost like it sounds like you attain nirvana. That's like a Buddhist. All of a sudden, you're awakened in some way. That this, that's what I'm kind of understanding. But the idea that we're moving in faith, that whole works faith thing. That's the thing I struggle with, and I keep thinking, if it's something you have to do, then it's something you have to do, and it's not something Jesus. There's some, I wrestle with this stuff all the time, and it's like, what do I have to do? Well, if Jesus did it all, and I'll sit and because I have to preach, I'll sit and think, well, what does it mean? If Jesus rescues you, he comes over in a helicopter, he throws like one of those life preservers, and you grab it and said, see, Jesus, I did the work. I actually grabbed it and I'm hanging on. And it's like, I don't know what you get to say to Jesus. Without me doing this, you would have failed. It's very strange to wrestle with, that you don't, because I keep coming up against, my own failures, and it's like, I'm hoping that I'm okay anyway, because it doesn't seem like I can rescue anybody. I can't rescue myself.
But wouldn't that be like,
Don't pop my balloon, man.
you came on, you're the one that wanted to talk to me, bro.
Yeah, just don't pop my balloon.
It's
I'm
like,
feeling good.
don't you have,
Yeah.
isn't continuing to fail a denial of his victory?
Well, I think there's,
Isn't it by his grace that you're
yeah,
allowed to grab the preserver? Isn't it through him
yeah,
and your faith in him that you have the strength at
that you
all
even,
to
yeah,
accept it?
absolutely. But I'm not going to claim any victory for me. Uh, that it was my work. It's somehow his work, and I'm being shaped in some way, but I don't see that it reduces my need for his work. His work still, and in some way, to me, I even think about eternity. That in some way, there's going to be this joyous, thing that just keeps going. You can still, you're going into eternity, achieving more and more glory or whatever it is that we attain, and something happens that changes you. I just don't want to tell people uh, that it's their work. I just don't want to say that at all.
It's their
That
surrender, and then to the extent that
it's, yeah,
their work that that you can work at surrendering.
yeah. Well, and that's weird.
Weird enough to pause the internet. Ah.
Yeah, it's weird. The whole thing is weird, and to me, this corner, there are people who are wrestling with it, and it's interesting. But when I think about Peterson, some I want to talk to Paul about was this idea that Peterson, in some way, is trying to build up from the ground, and it's almost like the Tower of Babel. That if you build up, your own efforts, if you clean your room, if you walk straight, if you do all these things, you're going to achieve. And even Peugeot kind of gets this thing that we're in some journey to meet God somewhere. And there's rituals and things that you do that you keep getting climbing this mountain until you're at the top. And I just don't, that's not what I preach. I don't know. I feel like there's this thing that it's a mystery. There's a mystery of how God comes down, and Jesus keeps saying that the last will be first. So I'm like, well, in some way you want to sacrifice more and die. You don't necessarily want to get to the top of the hill, because the king of the hill has to, what you were talking about, the world and the corruption of it. We understand the king of the hill game, and we understand winning through killing enemies. We understand that. But the king of the hill, there's room for one. And if you're trying to get up there, And Jesus says, no, I'm going to go lower and lower. And then I'm going to say, the last shall be first. So in some way, he flips it. And the base of the pyramid is this broad place where everyone is welcome. And he flips it that the king of the hill, the first shall be last. And that guy on the very top, he worked so hard to get to the top. Jesus kind of flips it. And wouldn't that be amazing? That there's room for the poor and the lost. So I'm trying to figure that out.
It's easier to be healed once you're broken.
Yeah.
And there's only room at the top of the hill for one, and it's already
It's
Jesus. So,
yeah.
what, you trying to shove him off the
Yeah.
hill?
Yeah. Yeah.
The
How do you preach it?
I
It's a
don't.
tough, it's a
I
tough,
don't.
I know, it's a tough thing we wrestle with. Well, in some way, you're trying to do that. I think your online presence is some prophetic call into the wilderness of the YouTube.
Maybe. That's more credit than I'll give myself. I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, right.
But um, it is people shouldn't be spending like you can spend 8 hours a day watching YouTube videos and you'll actually talking about Christ, but will you go into the closet and ask him to come into your life?
Yeah,
Or,
right.
so that's it's like and but then I get the whole like I'm walking into a movie theater saying, "Hey, all that stuff is fake. This is just a movie, guys," and ruining the experience for everyone.
Yeah,
And so I feel a lot of guilt about doing that. And it's
yeah. Well, I haven't figured out how to get out of guilt, and I'm the ruiner of moments. So I'd have a youth group, and we'd be, everyone would get into this place where, they're weeping and their hearts are broken. They're like feeling some glory, and then I say some dumb thing, ruin the whole thing. And then one of the kids said, "You're the ruiner of moments." Well, that's my banner. I wear it proudly. So I don't know. I was thinking about, so we're going into this virtual space. I was thinking, you know, this isn't new because even in books, there are kids who go into that virtual space. And The Lord of the Rings, when I read that and actually got through it the first time, because it took me two tries, The Hobbit was pretty easy. But all of a sudden you're in this world and you're looking around and you're like, you're in that virtual space. So somehow storytelling is even part of taking people out of their earthly suffering and showing them some vision of, I don't know, at least they can escape pain for a while, but ultimately you want to, give them some kind of glimpse of glory. You want some kind of,
for me, I always think that like the best we can do is get out of the way and be vessels for the
yeah,
glory. Like the light that shines through me isn't me. It's just to
right,
the extent I've managed to like
yeah,
wipe enough mud off for what
yeah,
is greater than me to shine through. Um,
yeah. To me, that when I think about uh, John, what's the other John? Peugeot, Vanderclay, John,
Vervaeke.
what's the Vervaeke? Yeah, he talks about flow state or something. So when you're preaching or telling a story, and you really actually are getting in the story and get this flow state going, and some kind of glory, and even when you see an artist and some kind of glory is coming through them, when they get caught up in themselves that it's me, that ruins the whole thing because the glory has to flow through them and not be them in some way. But life is that weird uh, that they get caught up in their own glory and forget that it's some gift that goes through them. I don't know. That's strange too. Because I would like people to uh, I would like people to not. I would like that it wouldn't be just the glamorous people that get to create content, and the idea that Hollywood, the beautiful people, are the only ones that can put beauty into the world. I think there's more beauty, and it's more beautiful now in this leveling that everybody can. I want everybody to just say something and not be afraid. Like, I'd like people to come to church and sing, and they always say, "No, I'm not good enough." And I'm thinking, yeah, you're not good enough for American Idol. For the world's idolatry, you're not good enough. You're trying to be king of the hill. But if you're in the church, it isn't, that isn't what the church is. And it's very hard to say that too, because, you want gifted, beautiful voices, but I think there's something deceiving about the world, that we think only the beautiful should be in front of us, and the broken have something. I showed kids, so I worked with kids all the time. I showed kids this video, the girl born without a face or something like that, and it was this, this tragic condition that this girl's face hadn't developed, and she was born and she was very disfigured, and they had to operate to get her nose functioning and her mouth. And after 40 surgeries, you looked at her and you thought, good Lord, it's horrifying. You're like, why does God allow something so horrible? And then you hear the mom and the brother as they have some sort of love for this girl that was witnessed. You're witnessing love that is so wildly abnormal and so beautiful because of the brokenness that it's shocking. It's crushing. It crushes the bad love, whatever things we thought love was. It was like, it's beautiful, the love that was portrayed for this broken girl who can't be fixed. She can't be fixed, but she can be loved. And it was like, that was love. I don't know. So there's something about that we don't get well. I don't know what it is. That brokenness, to see love in brokenness is better than love in Lady Gaga. Good Lord. Whatever she's doing. And isn't she fabulous? And the thing is, the gifted people are gifted and they are beautiful. And I am swept away by the beauty when someone's singing, you're like, it's like angels are descending. And it's like, yeah, I like that, but I don't think I preach that. I think I have to go. That's what the world understands. And it's not what I'm preaching. I don't know. There's a strange thing that we can't get past ourselves in some way, because we all get what the world wants and we agree. And that's that fall from the garden. We agree totally that if we could be God, if we could say what's right and wrong, if it was up to us, then, we're stuck in some place. So that's what I preach. We're stuck.
The age of decay, as Paul likes to say.
Yeah. And it absolutely is. We're stuck in it.
We all have a life sentence.
Yeah. But I just, when you think about if you're already sentenced to life, and you can say, well, what if I give it up? In some way you can sacrifice and say, well, I'm going to die. There's some peace about dying, knowing that you got no other option, so you might as well die well. And, that's a strange, true thing.
Or to earn a good death.
Yeah.
I like that. I've characterized it as that, and I found doing so beneficial from time to time. It's like, you're gonna die, but until then, or
Yeah.
or you have to live until you earn it. Um, because the
Yeah.
life part's the hard part a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been times I've laid on the floor and be like, God, just please let me die. I don't
Mhm.
I don't want to be here anymore. Please, please, please. And it's like, no, you've got to earn it. What are you doing? You're
Yeah.
wasting the gift,
Yeah.
and for that you have to suffer more. But
That's yeah. That's a hard lesson. That is a hard lesson. And I've seen people. It's hard to die well, to die, to earn it. Yeah, it's a hard lesson, but it's one I would like to apply that mindset. So I'll take that as a good word.
it's like it's easy to fall into judgment of yourself too.
Yeah.
Like I'm screwing around on the internet and there's lonely people, maybe
Mhm.
next door, maybe across the
Right.
street, and
Mhm.
I'm busy in here doing who knows what and probably
Yes.
hating it the whole time
Yeah.
and not being of service. But one of my early
Yeah.
rebellions in my teenage years was like anger at a God who made me just to be of service. Like, you're my servant. Like, what, you
Yeah.
make slaves and I'm supposed to worship you for that? What?
Yeah.
What? And,
Yeah.
but it doesn't, like, being angry about it, being bitter, doesn't make it any better.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and oddly enough, being of service does. When I can manage it, it it does seem to alleviate the suffering somewhat.
Yeah. It's strange that I took. So I worked as a youth leader for a number of years, uh, but it's strange that you can take kids on a mission or on some kind of trip where they're serving, and they aren't necessarily going to like it, but it becomes something that they love. They revel in doing the work and doing it as a little community. And then afterwards, uh, they love the experience, but they would never say, and who would? Yeah, I'd like to take a
Sh-
vacation and work.
It'd sure be great if I went and helped some lepers.
Yes. Yeah.
All right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It might be. It might be. Um,
Yeah.
since you've mentioned working with the youth, and I'd like to get into a little of the paintball thing, but
Mhm.
there's this Joseph Campbell bit that I can't let go of because I feel
Yeah.
it's one of the major things missing from our society. And he tells this story about this tribe in New Guinea or wherever, where
Mhm.
like at some point in the young man's life, he's got to go into a cave and fight a man wearing the mask of the gods. And the guy puts up a fight, and then when the when he lets the kid win, but he puts up a fight, and when he lets the kid win, he takes off the mask and puts it on the kid. And like I don't feel that in our society the young men are assigned with the task of holding up society. And to me
Mhm.
that's really symbolic of you're part of what holds everything together now.
Right.
And I think that's missing. And sure, my fantasy is that that comes through in paintball for Jesus,
Mhm.
which to anyone who isn't familiar with my particular version of the notion is like growing up here in Southwest America. Everybody was like super into high school football because it was
Mhm.
like the parents, everybody, the community could get behind their own children
Right.
participating in this competitive activity. And my notion was that if that spirit of like
Unity
pride,
or
community,
yeah.
whatever, of for that competition was done by was done through the churches in a way because like paintball is not cheap, and there's
Mhm.
and there's plenty of poor people that we could maybe get poor kids into church so they could play on the team
Mhm.
because I think the church needs to be revivified with youth
Right.
and that sponsoring paintball teams would be a way to do that. And for me
Mhm.
personally, having spent decades getting my dopamine from video games. Like
Hmm.
paintball was one of the few things that was as good or better than
Yeah.
like shooting rockets as Farah in Overwatch. Like the pump on the inside was just about as
Yeah.
good or better when I was shooting at people with paintball guns.
Hmm.
And so the whole notion for Paintball for Jesus, everybody, was just to combine like actual physical activity with community
Right.
support and church attendance and getting outside embodied.
Hmm.
And so there's the sales pitch for
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I took kids on paintball trips a few times, but it wasn't the big. It was very much an inner church type of
Everybody,
uh,
the friends have to
activity.
play. The friends have to break into teams and fight each other.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was churches
Yeah.
competing against each other, then you can
Yeah.
get some
Right.
real rivalry. Like, let's get the
Yeah.
Baptist. Raw.
But that's the kind of thing that Paul's talking about. Is the church is always experimenting with, what if we tried this? And there were skateboarders and there were other different things. And as a youth leader, I'm, constantly thinking, what do I do to get kids and to get kids to invite their friends? Because ultimately, you want to not just talk to the kids that are there.
Hmm.
You want them to invite friends because you're saying something to people who are condemned to death and uh, ought to give it up for something good. Because we'll die for something. We'll die for donuts or die for Twinkies or self glorification. We'll die. We'll give our lives to something.
You already
It's not
are.
clear that we're
You're.
picking. Yeah, we already are.
We're
Yeah.
we're currently giving your life. We're dying for something.
Yes. Yeah. And it's whatever you set up as your dream or your hope or your idol, some kind of idol. And that, Tim Keller says, it's not that it isn't a good thing. That's a good thing, but don't make it your best thing. And that's what we do is we're short-sighted and we take a thing and we don't think about the creator of the thing and all the things that are greater than the thing or how that excludes. You can't be consumed with, I don't know, tap dancing. I always talk about Simone Biles. I think is that what her name is, Simone Biles. She's the gymnast who's just fantastic, and she gave her life to gymnastics, and she's the greatest of all times. But what do you sacrifice when you put so much effort into one thing? And she's probably this wonderful person that had all these superior people who can do everything well. She's just the sweetest, kindest girl. She's a Christian girl. She can do flips all day long and like triple flips and probably also was good at school and is very courteous and actually does mission for people. And it's like, oh, good Lord, somebody who's so gifted. Like, dang it. I would like a couple of those gifts, but she's hogging them all. And I don't even know what that is. Is that what you were talking about? Is to dedicate yourself and climb these levels to where you're this saint. Plus, you can do backflips and get gold medals. I don't know. I'm not going to be that person, so I'm stuck. If I do a flip, I do not get up again, unfortunately.
Well, you're talking about when you're like playing with a guitar and how you don't think
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna get any better.
I'm
And
actually getting better.
oh, good.
I'm the
Yeah.
best. I'm the best I've ever been after 40 years.
But I think
Yeah.
like there's like you can get better,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's a matter of getting out of the way and letting stuff come through you.
Right.
And I think I mean that's the approach. Like actually like being able to embody that approach
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
perhaps the other thing that we can get better at. But
Yeah. Yeah, and I've decided that at this, I'm towards the end of my race, whatever the race is. At some point you think I'm closer to the finish line than the starting line. I'm 61, and I see that I might be able to do something that I love and do some kind of mission thing. And maybe not. Maybe I'll work at Walmart. I don't know what I'll do for, right now I'm working in a machine shop, mail drive truck. I don't know what I'll do, but it'll get less and less that I have less and less skills and physical strength. But I kind of want to try hard at something, and like a gymnast or a guitar player, and say, okay, for goodness sakes, try hard for a while. Try and get that discipline in your life. So I'm trying to get these practices in place. And maybe that's what Peugeot talks about, is these practices that turn you into a really well-functioning human. Because I haven't been a real well-functioning human. I've been hobbled, and of my own doing, often. Of my own doing often. That I shoot myself in the foot.
Discipline's a
Other
hard
people aren't.
sell.
Yeah.
But if you rebrand it as like discipleship, like put the disciple back in discipline,
Yes.
it goes down a little
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah. And it's strange too that all people are disciples too. You pick whatever thing you love, and you also have a person that embodies it, and you're imitating. You're a follower of some health guru, or some whatever, Paul Vanderklay. You're a disciple of something, and it's a video game expert, or I don't know.
Or a self-indulgent. who's
Yes.
who's the
Homer
most
Simpson.
self-indulgent person on the planet right now? Who's that?
So I
That's the
don't.
footsteps we're following in.
Yes. Yeah, Homer Simpson. It's like I am his disciple. I don't know. But I think, we're always a disciple of someone or something as well. We imagine who's the best at what we love, and then we're trying to imitate them. Well, I think my daughter watches YouTube stars or whatever, and watches the kids at school. And I tell the kids too, people are always watching you. And I don't care if you believe it or not, there are people looking at you and saying, I think I'd like to be that. And it doesn't matter if you're doing good or bad. There are people watching somebody, whatever, doing drugs, and they're like, I think I'd like to be that. You're always discipling in some way. People are watching each other, and they're always picking, oh, that I don't like, that I do like. And they're always, picking who they're going to follow. Because I don't think we go it alone very often.
Despite how
And
we
it's kind of
feel.
tragic. Yeah, it's kind of tragic if we do. If you see somebody who's that out of community, that they're alone, that's not a good place to be.
And yet there are people who will look at that person and say, that's more
Yeah,
appealing than what I'm living right now.
yeah, yeah, and that's interesting that you can't even get out of that loop. We're always watching each other.
Unless you get shadow banned by YouTube, then no one can watch.
Yes. Yeah.
You want to hit anything else before we wrap this?
I think, I don't know if we said anything. We went around a lot of areas and a lot of weird things to cut out, but
We at least touched on
I
most of
really
these.
I enjoyed the conversation.
Me too.
Yeah.
Good to meet you, Tom.
Yes, you as well,
I
Riz.
I want some guitar footage.
Well, I'm going to try and get uh, something up on YouTube. I'll
Even
try and
if
get a
it's
channel going.
just to practice, just like this is me
Yeah.
practicing, so people
Well,
can follow that.
I have to get auditions up so that people, if I'm starting to try and get into coffee houses or whatever, an open mic, and I probably ought to have some kind of audition tape that they can just say, yeah, we'll let you come in. Because I don't know if everybody's just going to welcome some dude in and say, we'll give you the stage. I think you have to have some commitment and something to present.
Or you
We'll
can
see.
go around and ask and find out and make sure that
Yeah.
that's not a false assumption you're using to stop yourself from trying.
Well, I'm already got a couple open mics lined up, so I'm going to get out. I'm going to force myself to do it.
Excellent. That's
Yeah,
more than
you
I
gotta
am
do that.
generally capable of. I
Well,
salute you, sir.
I decided I got to force myself because I know I'll hide. I'll hide and play in my room, which is not what I really want. So,
Well, thanks for asking for this, and
yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate
it'll be on
what
the
you're doing.
channel.
Okay, we'll cut out, make me look
I'll do my
way
best,
better
man.
than
I'll do my best.
yes,
You were fiddling with your ears a lot.
I know. I did not have the right equipment.
All right, good to see you, Tom.
Thanks, Grizz. Take care.